I'm really excited about what I'm going to share because I always like to train on what I'm currently learning and going through. And so a lot of this that I'm going to share with you here in these next few minutes, a lot of it's what I've learned this past year, my first full year as a national sales director. And there are things that I have actually implemented in my life. And so how many of you just know in your bones and in your guts that you're just made for so much more? And that you're meant for so much more? Who knows that? Do you guys know that? Because you are. Your current circumstance, like Roya said, you don't want to live in your current circumstance, you want to live in your vision. And I want to talk today about how to intentionally make a shift from where you are to move to your next level by using habits to your advantage. That's what we're going to talk a lot about today, is habits. And champion habits and how to really fight for the life of your dreams. And last year around this time, I just had my daughter Aria, our second baby, Aria. And so I had her last year. And we had just also, in addition to having Aria, we had just birthed our new national area. So with the birth of my second child and the birth of our new area, it really launched me into a new chapter in my life. It was a new leadership position, a new dynamic in our home, and it was also a new way that I worked and thought about my business. And I made a very, very intentional decision this time last year that I was going to be just as focused on growth as I had been for the first 5 years that I was a top director. I had no desire to sink into a comfort zone in my new position, and I didn't allow myself to feel as if I had arrived, because of course in Mary Kay we never do. We never do arrive in life or in our business. And more than ever before, I was going to focus on growth in every area of my life, not just my business. My theme since that time last year has been taking it to the next level. That's been my hashtag, taking it to the next level. And that's absolutely has been my intentional focus, not just in Mary Kay, but in every area of my life. And I'm going to teach you what I've learned about how to be intentional about growth and by using habits as assets into your advantage. And I've really learned in my 6-year journey from my starter kit to becoming a national sales director, a big thing that I learned that success is so not about what you do in life and accomplish, kind of like Heather was saying on stage up here. It's not about your achievements. And I definitely used to think that it was about that. It's about what you do and what you accomplish. But it's so much more about the person that you become in the process. Because what you do is not your identity. Your identity is so much more than that. It's about the person that you're becoming. And so that's why our life's focus should not just be on growing our businesses, but growing our whole self, physically, spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. Also growing in relationships, growing in our spirituality and our walk with God. In every way, we should be taking it to the next level. And I believe that's how you create a massive shift in your life, so that you're moving from where you are right now in your current circumstance to where you're actually meant to be, where God created you to be. And so how do we actually practically go about doing that? That's what I'm going to talk about. It's easy to set growth goals. Anybody can set a goal. A lot of people around this time of year set New Year's resolutions and new goals. That's easy to do. But the implementation of those goals is a whole another ballgame. And so I'm going to give you practical tips on how to make that shift. And we're going to talk about 3 main things, and I really want to dive into these 3 things. And the first one is how to have a massive transformation. I'm going to give you a formula on how to have a massive transformation. The second is how to create small daily wins. How to create small daily wins. And then the third one is that those small daily wins become habits in your life. Okay, so we're going to have a massive transformation by creating small daily wins, which will eventually grow into habits. So let's start with how to have a massive transformation. Darren Hardy is the author of The Compound Effect. I read that book last December. And he's also the publisher of Success Magazine, which I began subscribing to last January. And I read the book and just read his magazine a lot. I'm pretty connected to his training and what he's doing. And I'll give you some background information on him. He was making 6 figures by the age of 18. In real estate, and he's been a wildly successful entrepreneur since then. And I like him because his training is it's stupid simple. It's so simple, it's practical, and it's easily applied. And so he has something he calls his massive transformation formula, which we're going to walk through right now. Okay, well, I want you to start by answering this question. What would have to happen for you? And what would have to happen in your, and I want you to think specifically in your business, okay? So right now we're business focused. Yes, there are many other areas of your life, but we're focusing on your Mary Kay business. What would have to happen for you to say on June 30th of 2014, 6 months from now, this was the best seminar year ever? This was absolutely my best seminar year ever. what would have to happen? And that's going to be a very different answer for everyone in this room. But I want you to be clear on what that would be. And it's got to be specific and measurable, you guys. It's got to be a very specific goal. And so it can't be like, well, I want to grow my team, or oh, I want to sell a lot, or I want to have some offspring. It's got to be like super, super specific and measurable. So write that goal down right now. Okay, next, I want you to think of, the next step is to think of the 2 to 5 key behaviors that will directly influence that goal. Okay, 2 to 5 key behaviors, things you do daily, that will directly influence that goal. And I want to talk real quickly because I want to be very specific because I want you guys to be clear on what these things are, and I want you to leave here with a plan of what your daily habits are going to be. And I think it needs to be activity related, not results related. But let's use booking calls as an example. Like booking calls could be a daily activity that can influence your goal. Now, for a newer consultant who hasn't developed or mastered the skills of booking calls, I would suggest you do an activity goal like 20 dials a day, okay? So it's activity related, not results related. But for sales directors or consultants who have really mastered the skill and feel confident in booking, I would do it activity related. Or I'm sorry, results related. Like directors get 2 bookings a day. Whereas consultants, if you're not super confident with booking yet, I would stick to just the activity of picking up the phone and calling 20 people. So that's just an example of what a daily activity or goal should look like. You know, what does need to happen daily for you to move towards your goals? Do you know? Do you know what needs to happen daily to achieve that goal that you wrote down by June 30th? Because you do have to know what the daily picture looks like. I worked with Joe Rangel, a business coach last year, which most of you know and have worked with him. Actually, it was 2 years ago, and for 6 months, from January to June, I worked with him. And in the beginning of our coaching process together, he asked me a question, and this was in the window of time that we were finishing up our national area. And so he asks me, what daily goals do you need to accomplish to finish your national area? And I was like totally stumped by that question. And you guys, at this time, I was a top director. We had done trips ever since my first full year as a sales director. I think I was an elite executive, almost a national sales director. I mean, I was on my game and in the zone. And those of you who know me know that I'm like the queen of daily consistency. But I did not know what I needed to do daily to finish our goal of finishing our national area. You know, I had an idea of what it looked like, but didn't have a clear picture of what the daily picture should look like. And so I really had to break it down, and for me it came down to the number of people I had to be in front of daily to produce the growth that we needed in the directors in our area to finish our area. So are you clear on your daily activity? Because if I wasn't clear, I would question how clear you are about what needs to happen daily. So for example, I've always heard from Gloria Mayfield Banks that 2 bookings a day is the path to Cadillac. For those of you who want to earn a Cadillac or be on that path, 2 bookings a day. So be super specific, but it also has to be very simple and achievable. I mean, you cannot end world hunger or build a national area in a day. So it's got to be something that when you look at that daily activity you have to do, you've got to be able to say, like, I've got this, I can do this, I can achieve this. It's got to almost like give you confidence that you can get it done. It's got to be that small. And the concept is that when you build small daily wins, it compounds over time to create massive momentum. Now they're going to seem very insignificant in the moment, and it may even feel like they're not impacting the big goals, but when you do them with consistency, they produce crazy, crazy results. And then all of a sudden, you're standing on stage telling your story, wondering how you got there. But it all goes back to the daily habits and daily consistency. Now they can change and evolve, and they can include other areas of your life. Pam Shaw did a goal-setting session for directors in the room. You probably remember 2 years ago, I think we were in Atlanta. She did a big goal-setting session at Leadership on our Director Day. And she told us to come up with what I think she called it a push goal. And it was that one goal that drove every other goal. Well, my push goal at that time was a commitment to daily quiet time, prayer, and affirmations, and reading books. That really wasn't directly influencing my national area and building my national area, but it had everything to do with that. My commitment to that drove every other goal that I wanted to achieve. And so your 5 daily things can include other areas that are going to support the growth of your business, if that makes sense. Here, let me give you an example of a daily habit that I started last year. I had my daughter Aria, and I played sports my whole life. I worked out in college a lot, played volleyball in college, and had always been an athlete. But when I got pregnant with Ian, I stopped working out. Had Ian, and then didn't work out between having Ian and Aria, and then didn't work out at all when I was pregnant with Aria. So it had been like 2 years of not working out, plus I just had 2 babies. And so I just had this big commitment to get in shape again and feel strong again and feel healthy. And so I knew I had to get back in shape, but was totally out of shape and not really motivated and was not used to spending time doing that because it hadn't been a part of my life for 2 years. So here's where I started last year at this time. This was my workout. You ready for this? I did 3 planks. You know, planks are when you like hold yourself up like that for a minute. Okay, so three sets for a minute. So that equals 3 minutes of working out. And then I did 3 sets of 10 push-ups, so 30 push-ups. So it took me about 5 to 6 minutes, and I didn't even break a sweat. And for a college athlete, you guys, that is a lame workout. I mean, I'm like, really? Is this where I'm at? But that's where I was at. And so eventually I increased, every single month I increased my workout a little bit more, and eventually I was doing P90 and Insanity and feeling strong and healthy and back in shape again. But I had to start where I was. Okay, had I set the goal to start with P90 or Insanity, I wouldn't have done it. I might have started excited and strong, but I would have been sore, it would have taken too much time initially, it wasn't small enough. So I had to start so small. So every day when I woke up and I saw 3 planks and 3 sets of 10 push-ups, I'm like, I can do that. I can totally do that. And I only did it 3 days a week, but eventually I built up from there. And so I hope that gives you an example of how it has to feel like a win. Because you know what it did? It did for me? It created the sense that I was winning. It created the sense that I can do this. I can get back in shape. I can be strong again. I can spend time doing this. Okay? In a way, these 5 key behaviors, they're kind of like your 6 most important things, kind of, but you got to take it a step further. Once you have your 2 to 5 key behaviors, they have to be specifically scheduled into your day. You cannot wake up with just a list, because that already creates confusion. Because you haven't set aside the amount of time that each of those activities are going to take. You're not sure when or where you're going to plug it into your day. So if you just have a list, you're already behind. Okay? You have to schedule every hour of your day. I didn't say you had to work every hour of your day, but you have to schedule every hour of your day. And I know for a lot of you, does that sound like rigid and like way too structured, and you're like, I want to throw up if I have to schedule every hour of my day. Okay, well let me tell you guys, don't knock it unless you've tried it. Because it gives you the most peace and freedom and joy and downtime and personal time more than you've ever had. Because when you do that, you are super productive. When you are productive, you have more time off, okay? When you don't schedule it and you're flying by the seat of your pants, you're working all day. I promise you I work less than you by doing that. Because you're just leaving it open and flying by the seat of your pants and reacting. I mean, couldn't we just react to Voxer and email and text like all day long? That's like a full-time job just to keep up with communication. So if you're not scheduled and disciplined and being proactive versus reactive, then you're losing a lot of time that could be for family and for downtime, okay? So for those of you who think it's rigid, I would just embrace it, knowing it's going to bring more peace and freedom and time in your life. Okay, so what I want you to do right now, and we're going to do this very quickly, with a partner. Right now I'm going to give you 1 minute to talk to a partner about what your key behaviors are, what you're kind of thinking like, okay, this is what I think I need to do. And actually, let me give you an example first. I'm going to talk about Karen May. She's the sales director in our area, and she's waving over there, yeah. I taught this to my directors at seminar. So this is kind of a repeat for them. I taught this concept to them. And she really jumped on board with this in July and started doing this. And she picked her 5 key behaviors. And they did change. Each month she kind of had to like adjust them. So you can adjust them as you go along. And what she did is she printed off a month-at-a-glance calendar. And in handwriting, yeah, she's got her calendar right there. You guys can see it. She's a high-eye personality, so she highlights in different colors just to make it look pretty and have a lot of fun with it. But she's got her 5 key behaviors. She writes them down every day, handwrite every working day. And then as she accomplishes those things, she highlights them. And so she started doing this and was really focused on this. And, first couple of months, not a whole lot of results. She wasn't seeing the growth and the momentum that she wanted to have kick in. And it just was kind of like in the same place. I think Kara would agree. And then all of a sudden, you guys, momentum kicked in like crazy. They earned their car, and they're really on the path to Cadillac. And her and her unit are on fire right now. And it all goes back to her making the decision to be intentional about her day and intentional about her work. And she was super intentional about that. So her 5 key behaviors, I think one had to do with bookings. One had to do with, why don't you stand up and tell us, Kara, just so they can hear an example of what some key behaviors are, just real quick. Okay, awesome. So if you didn't hear that, she had like a reading time of leadership book and affirmations that she would read every day. She would do her BSF, which is a Bible study and a quiet time every day. She would do 2 bookings a day, 5 coaching calls a day, and I think like follow up with prospect type of stuff. And so those are her little things. And when you look at each one of those, they don't take a lot of time, and they're pretty simple goals. So that's an example of the 5 key daily behaviors. So it's often what we do. We say, I'm going to warm chatter. That's my daily behavior I'm going to do. I'm going to warm chatter. But if we don't decide specifically how many names we're going to get, and when we're going to go out and do it, where we're going to go, it's not going to happen. Because we see warm chatter, and then we just keep pushing it back and don't ever do it. So get very specific and clear about what that looks like, how many, what time you're going to do it each day, and where you're going to go. Okay, so now that we have the 5 key behaviors concepts, what these are daily wins that you're going to have. And the next step in this process is to create a tracking system for them. And so, okay, who are the trackers in the room? Who likes to track? Okay, who hates it? Who hates to track? Okay, that's what I thought. Just as many people like it as hate it. And let me just say a little bit about tracking. I mean, you cannot change what you do not know. You do not know what you do not track. A tracked number grows. And Kara May is not not naturally a tracker. She's a high I personality, and she actually had to put tracking as a key behavior so that she would actually do it, because it's not something that came naturally for her. But as long as you use the excuse that you're not a tracker and you don't like numbers, you'll stay in the same place and you will not grow. And so you've got to come to the point where you're willing to give up the excuse that I'm not a tracker, I'm not organized, I don't like numbers, because once you let go of that, you'll start moving forward, because you can't take the tracking piece out of this business. But I do realize that everybody likes to track differently, and so you can create your own system to track these 5 key behaviors, but you do need to track them in some way. I would have them on my iPad, and you know how you can make an all-day event? I had an all-day event for each of them, and as I did them, I would delete them. I would just delete them, so that at the end of the day, they'd be all deleted, and I would know that they were done. I would not let myself go to bed at night until I had deleted all my 5 key daily behaviors, and then they were gone. And it felt like a sense of accomplishment for me, because I like the check mark thing, but I also don't like paper, so I switched to an iPad, and so by deleting, it gives me that sense of having a check mark. Let's move on to daily wins. We talked about the massive transformation, how to have a massive transformation. That's your key behaviors, tracking them and doing them daily. And then let's talk about daily wins. So I want to read you a story to kind of illustrate this point. And it's going to take me like 5 minutes to read it, so bear with me here. Okay, when Michael Phelps' alarm clock went off at 6:30 a.m. on the morning of August 13th, 2008, he crawled out of bed in the Olympic Village in Beijing and fell right into his routine. He pulled on a pair of sweatpants and walked to breakfast. He had already won 3 gold medals earlier that week, giving him 9 in his career. He had 2 races that day. By 7 a.m., he was in the cafeteria eating his regular race day menu of eggs, oatmeal, 4 energy shakes, the first of more than 6,000 calories he would consume over the next 16 hours. Phelps' first race, the 200-meter butterfly, was his strongest event. It was scheduled for 10 a.m. 2 hours before the starting gun fired, he began his usual stretching regimen, starting with his arms, then his back, then working down to his ankles, which were so flexible he could extend more than 90 degrees, farther than a ballerina's. At 8:30, he slipped into the pool and began his first warm-up lap, 800 meters of mixed styles, followed by 600 meters of kicking, 400 meters pulling a buoy between his legs, 200 meters of stroke drills, and a series of 25-meter sprints to elevate his heart rate. The workout took precisely 45 minutes, and that was just his warm-up. At 9:15, he exited the pool and started squeezing into his LZR Racer, a bodysuit so tight it required 20 minutes of tugging to put it on. Then he talk about Spanx. I need to get me a pair of those. Then he clammed his headphones over his ears, cranked up the hip-hop music and he played before every race, and he waited. Phelps had started swimming when he was 7 years old to burn off some energy that was driving his mom and his teachers crazy. When a local swimming coach named Bob Bowman saw Phelps' long torso, his big hands, and relatively short legs, he knew that Phelps could become a champion. But Phelps was emotional. He had trouble calming down before races. His parents were divorcing, and he had trouble coping with the stress of that. Bowman purchased a book of relaxation exercises and asked Phelps' mom to read them aloud every night. The book contained a script. Tighten your hand into a fist and release it. Imagine the tension melting away. That tensed and relaxed each part of Phelps' body before he fell asleep. Bowman believed that for swimmers, the key to victory was creating the right routines. Phelps, Bowman knew, had the perfect physique for the pool. That said, everyone who eventually competes in the Olympics has the perfect musculature. He could see that Phelps at a young age had the capacity for obsessiveness, which made him an ideal athlete. What Bowman could give Phelps, however, what would set him apart from other competitors, were habits. Habits that would make him the toughest and strongest mental swimmer in the pool. He didn't need to control every aspect of Phelps' life. All he needed to do was target a few specific habits that had nothing to do with swimming and everything to do with creating the right mindset. He designed a series of behaviors that Phelps could use to become calm and focused before each race, to find those tiny advantages that in a sport where victory can come in milliseconds would make all the difference. When Phelps was a teenager, for instance, at the end of each practice, Bowman would tell him to go home and watch the videotape. Watch it before you go to sleep and when you wake up. The videotape wasn't real. Rather, it was mental visualization of the perfect race. Each night before falling asleep and each morning after waking up, Phelps would imagine himself jumping off the blocks in slow motion, swimming flawlessly. He would visualize his strokes, the walls of the pool, his turns, and the finish. He would imagine the wake behind his body, the water dripping off his lips as his mouth cleared the surface, what it would feel like to rip off his cap at the end. He would lie in bed and shut his eyes and watch the entire competition, the smallest details, again and again and again, until he knew each part by heart. And I want to insert here and make a point that he visualized the process, okay? He didn't visualize getting a gold medal around his neck and standing on the podium and listening to the national anthem and getting calls for endorsements. That's not what he pictured. He visualized the process. How often do we just picture the Cadillac or the stage or the commission check and we visualize the results, but forget to visualize the skincare class, warm chattering and intimidating woman, making booking calls, okay? We need to get very serious about visualizing the process and perfecting the process. Okay, so during practices, when Bowman ordered Phelps to swim at race speed, he would shout, "Put in the videotape," and Phelps would push himself as hard as he could. It almost felt anticlimactic when he cut the water because he had done it so many times in his head that by now it felt rote. But it worked. He got faster and faster. Eventually, all Bowman had to do before a race was whisper, "Get the videotape ready," and Phelps would settle down and crush the competition. And once Bowman established a few core routines and habits, every other habit in his life fell into place. His diet, his practice schedules, his stretching, his sleep routines, they all seemed to fall in place because he had a few core habits that drove everything else. At the core of why these habits were so effective and why they acted as keystone habits was something known within academic literature as a small win. Small wins are exactly what they sound like. They're exactly what they sound like, and they're a part of how keystone habits create widespread changes. A huge body of research has shown that small wins have enormous power and can influence disproportionate to the accomplishments of the victories themselves. Small wins are a steady application of a small advantage. Once a small win has been accomplished, force is set into motion that favor another small win. Small wins fuel transformative changes by leveraging tiny advantages into patterns that convince people that bigger achievements are within reach. Okay, my planks and my push-ups, small win. They convinced me I could keep going and do more. there's a series of things that we do. This is Bowman, his coach, speaking. There's a series of things that we do before each race that are designed to give Michael the sense of building victory based on small wins. If you were to ask Michael what's going on in his head before his competition, he would say he's not really thinking about anything. He's just following the routine and the habit. But that's not right. It's more like the habits have taken over. When the race arrives, he's more than halfway through the plan that he's been victorious at every stretch, or at every step. The stretches, they all went like planned. The warm-up laps, just like he visualized. His headphones are playing exactly what he expected. The actual race and win is just another step in the pattern that started earlier that day that has been nothing but victories. The big win is only a natural extension of the small wins. Okay, so that's the point I really want to drive home, is that deciding on these key behaviors, which are your small wins, it gives you two advantages. First, you're doing the work that it takes to grow and build your business. Secondly, small wins set you up for massive victory. Small wins create other small wins until it just becomes a habit. You get used to winning every day. And so the big victory almost just becomes a natural and obvious outflow of the small wins that are already happening every day in your workday. There is actually a chemical reaction that happens in your brain when you have a small win, or when your brain perceives that you are winning. Scientists have studied marathon runners, and did you know that all marathon runners are usually able to sprint across the finish line? Pretty incredible. When miles back, most runners hit the wall. They want to quit, they almost give up, their body shuts down in some ways, and some even experience a sense of depression. So how then are they able to sprint across the finish line in the last 100 yards of the race? Scientists believe it's because of what happens in the brain. They call it the X spot. When your brain recognizes that success is not only possible, but also probable, the reaction is physically powerful. The brain releases a flood of endorphins and other chemicals that give runners the energy to accelerate. Our brains are a goal-oriented machine, constantly making assessments on three things: how far the goal is, the likelihood of achieving it, and the effort required. Okay? Your brain is constantly making assessments, I'm going to repeat that, of how far away the goal is, the likelihood of achieving it, and the effort required. So whenever you set a Mary Kay goal, your brain is always calculating how far away you are and the likelihood you're going to achieve that goal. The brain responds to how you perceive those things, okay? Your brain responds to how you perceive how far the goal is. The good news is that we can control how we perceive things, and the small wins are how we control that perception, because small wins makes it seem like success is likely and probable and attainable. So we can intentionally tap into our own X spot to release that extra energy needed to achieve a big goal. That's where the small daily win comes in. When you can create success daily and create a win daily, your brain actually perceives that you're on target, that you're getting closer to the goal, that success is likely and probable. And being the goal-oriented machine that your brain is, it will actually work to your advantage in achieving that goal. Now, we all know the alternative. Okay, what's the alternative to this? The alternative is not setting yourself up for a win each day, finishing the day feeling defeated, feeling behind. To not create daily wins can cause you to feel like you're losing, like you'll never catch up. You start saying things to yourself like, I'm not ranked where I want to be, I'm behind, I'm losing, I'll never catch up. Why even try? I'll get started next month, I'll get started next year. And when your brain perceives those thoughts and emotions, it works as if it is truth, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So, wow, we cannot underestimate the power of creating small wins. We talked about massive transformation. The key behaviors are your small daily wins, and the goal is that these actually become habits in your life. And it's the last point that I want to make. There's incredible power in a habit. The power is that once a habit is established, it happens without even thinking of it. You almost don't have to use any energy or willpower to complete the action or the task. It just happens automatically because it's ingrained in the way you think and the way you work. Habits can obviously be incredible assets to our life, or they can be absolutely destructive. Our lives are an accumulation of our habits. No one plans to be obese. Nobody plans to go bankrupt. Nobody plans to become an alcoholic. But all of those things can be traced back to small daily choices and activities, which became habits, which compounded over time, which creates the lives that we have. In the book Power of Habit, scientists studied the concept of willpower. What they found is that willpower is kind of like a muscle. If it gets overworked or worked too long, it kind of gets weak, and it's hard to have extended energy because its reserves have been used up. So you know when somebody works all day, a long day, they come home and all they want to do is veg out in front of the TV and relax because they've used their willpower up all day. But the benefit that it's a muscle is that when it's worked in small amounts, the muscle does grow. When we practice willpower in one area of our lives, it naturally spills over into other areas. So I'm going to tell you about 2 quick studies that I hope will illustrate this concept. Okay, there was 2 groups of college students, and they were going to be a part of this research. And both groups were told to skip a meal, and they were placed in 2 rooms with plates of freshly baked warm chocolate chip cookies and then a plate of raw radishes. One group was told they could eat as many cookies or radishes that they want, but they could definitely eat the cookies. The other group was told that they could absolutely not eat the cookies, but they had to eat the radishes instead, and they did have to eat them. Both groups followed instructions perfectly. But that wasn't the real test. The real test came after. Afterwards, they were told to solve a puzzle that actually had no solution. That was actually the rest of the test. The group who ate the cookies spent twice as much time trying to figure out the solution, and they enjoyed the process. The group who had to eat the radishes got very discouraged and annoyed and gave up a lot sooner in frustration. The scientists concluded that as humans, we only have so much willpower. When we use a lot of it, we drain ourselves so that other tasks become even more difficult and taxing. That's why it's so important to establish good habits. Because although hard in the beginning, and takes a lot of willpower in the beginning, once you've created the habit, it no longer takes that energy and willpower. It happens almost automatically, which frees you up to focus on other tasks that require more energy. You ultimately become a more productive person. So let's apply this concept to our Mary Kay businesses because I want to show you how this can help you make that shift to your next level. There were some Keystone habits I created in my business as a new consultant and a newer sales director, and I'm going to talk about 3 of them, which I think you can all relate to. And let me just add that all habits follow a habit loop, what's called a habit loop. There's always a cue or a trigger, and then that trigger causes the routine or habit to happen, and then there's always a reward. For a habit to exist, it always follows that habit. A cue or trigger, then the routine or habit follows, and then there's a reward that comes along with that. And so, for example, for somebody who's created the habit of running in the morning, their trigger or cue when they wake up could just be their shoes and workout clothes at the side of their bed. They see those, it triggers the habit, they go for the run, and then the reward of that is obvious. And so there's 3 habits that I created. I'm going to talk about booking calls, book 10, and a power start. My cue or my trigger, and everybody's cue and trigger is going to be different, but I'll just tell you what worked for me. It was just that it was on my plan sheet. And the plan sheet, my plan sheet just tells me what to do. I don't work for it. No, it doesn't work for me. I actually work for it. So if it tells me to do it, I have satisfaction in just the fact that I can check it off or delete it. So that was always my cue that is just booked into my day. And so I would have the cue and then work on that and then do the routine or the habit. And then obviously the results and the rewards from doing the habit are obvious. As a new director, these were daunting tasks to me. Okay, booking calls was like an event in my day. That if I set aside time, I would dread it all day. I wouldn't look forward to it. It would take emotional energy away from me all day because I wouldn't want to do it. When it came time to do it, like Roy, I would like stomp into my office and like the phone felt like it was 10,000 pounds, and every time I dialed, I thought, oh, I should just give up. And so it was an event. It took a lot of energy and willpower to do that. But I did it again and again and again and again, and it became a habit. At some point, I didn't even have to think about doing it. It almost required no energy. It was just a part of what I did. It was a habit. It was no big deal. I just picked up the phone and did it. Book 10, another very daunting task for me as a new sales director. To get those 10 parties booked and get guest lists just always seemed so difficult. But I did it, and I did it, and I did it, and I did it, and it became a habit. It really became, I got to the point where I would have had to try harder to not do a book 10 than to actually do a book 10, because it was just a part of the way that I worked, and it was a part of my schedule. Same with a power start. it seemed so difficult in the beginning, but I created the habit, and I would have had to try harder to not do a power start than to just do that because it was a habit. So do you see how habits, once you form them and they take no energy, it gives you all this time and energy to focus on other things. And so I could focus on developing myself as a leader. I could also develop on building other leaders in our unit. And we built this trip unit that was just a machine. It was happening effortlessly because so many habits, so many good habits were established in my daily routine. And this is all while maintaining peace and harmony in my life and always keeping quiet time and spiritual growth as a priority. We had 2 children in the process of this as I was creating these habits. And it allowed me to do life well alongside of building a top trip unit in a national area in 6 years. I was still able to do life well. Habits serve you well because they almost like extend your workday because you do become more productive when you create habits. Some of you are putting some directors are putting so much energy into your personal business that there's not a lot being poured into your unit or your people are developing those systems because all that energy is being put into your personal business. So create that habit so you've got the energy to focus on other things. So let's review, you guys. Let's review right now. The process of making this shift from where you are to your next highest level is to first be clear on your goal. Look back at the goal that you set when I started talking. That goal that would make you say, this was the best seminar year ever, when we land on June 30th of 2014. Next, you've got your 2 to 5 key behaviors, and I hope you're clear or fairly clear on what those are, and you've got those outlined, and you can start adding those into your schedule and booking those into your schedule. These become your daily wins that mentally keep you in the zone and on top of your game. And you're going to end each day feeling like you're winning and feeling like success is likely and probable. You do them until they become an effortless habit, and you guys just watch the growth and abundance and momentum play out in your business.
Several years ago, I had the great honor of working the first ever Kobe Bryant Nike Skills Academy. Nike invited the top 20 high school shooting guards and the top 10 college shooting guards in the country to this camp with Kobe. And it's kind of funny now that I look back on it, how many of those players are now household names in the NBA. However, at that time, the least recognized player there was Stephen Curry. But I knew immediately that he was the most impressive and that thinking long term, he was going to be a future NBA superstar. And here's how I knew that. It was all because of his work habits. Now, those skills academies, we would have 2 workouts a day for 3 straight days. 30 minutes before every single workout, most players were still in their flip-flops and had on their headphones, and Stephen Curry had already started doing some form shooting. He had already started taking game shots, game spots, and game speed. By the time the workout officially started, he had probably already made 100, 150 shots and was in a full sweat. When the workout actually started, he was meticulous with everything that he did. He made sure that he had perfect footwork. He made sure that he had perfect shooting form. If he did anything and it wasn't perfect, he did it over again. And he didn't need a coach to tell him, he just did it. And then probably the most impressive thing that he did was as soon as every workout was over, he would not leave the court until he swished 5 free throws in a row. Do you know how hard that is? But that's the level of excellence that he holds himself. And the moral of that story is that success is not an accident. Success is actually a choice. And Stephen Curry is one of the best shooters on the planet today because he has made the choice to create great habits. And the habits that you have today on par with the dreams that you have for tomorrow. That's something that you need to ask yourself every single day. Because whatever you do on a regular basis today will determine where you will be tomorrow.
Curry got the 3 off. Tie game! Steph Curry knocks it down. He is in a zone right now all by himself. Curry defended now. Curry hitting another 3.
What kid has done is just incredible. It's some of the best shooting I've ever seen.
And the other thing with Steph Curry, this is what he reached last year. You get a text from somebody, Steph is heating up. Like, there's only a couple players in the league that gets you to stop everything you're doing to watch whatever he's doing, and I think he reached that level last year.
Like, the one thing I was saying, can he continue to shoot like this? He's never not shot like this. He's always shot. You know, the only thing, this is a stage now that's bigger and better. But in college at Davidson, he was a shooter like this. In high school, he was a shooter like this. And you're watching it now.
Curry from deep. There's the record. He stands alone as the best three-point shooter in a single season in NBA history.
And the moral of that story is that success is not an accident. Success is actually a choice. And Stephen Curry is one of the best shooters on the planet today because he has made the choice to create great habits. And my question to you is, are the habits that you have today on par with the dreams that you have for tomorrow?